Hello, and welcome to The Pursuit podcast, where we talk about all things dating and relationships, especially to those in the Adventist persuasion. This season, we are talking about issues and topics pertaining to dating in your late 20s. Today's episode is on the attention epidemic, on how it's hard to talk to people in real life, or at least that's what I'm seeing. Today, I'm joined by my buddy Mike and my sister Abby. Have you guys noticed anything, a change in how Adventist young adults talk to each other and communicate?
Well, my long years of experience on this planet,
All 28 of them.
over the
20.
last century,
Tell us, Sensei.
noticed. Well, I don't know. Like growing up as a kid, I didn't really have phone, so I was just kind of always talking.
Like when you got there.
Yeah, but
Yeah.
I feel like growing up, I feel like most kids when I was growing up didn't really have, and it wasn't like that long ago. I mean, I'm 28. But I think I've definitely noticed a change. But I don't know because it's also cultural too. I feel like because being African American, I feel like a lot of us talk, or we just, and especially in my family, my folks being from the islands, like there's just a bunch of chatty
Cathys.
people, and they just like having a good time. So I think there's also a cultural difference. But I mean, if we're just gonna talk to where I'm at right here, like I do notice how there is definitely areas where I can feel super free to talk to whoever I want and be myself, and people are super welcoming. And then there's a lot of other areas where it's just like, man, do I smell bad? Like what's going on? Nobody wants to talk to me, or I just feel like I'm awkward or something. Like at least people make me feel that way, So I can't really answer so much for personally, but when I talk to like people who are older than me, like my parents or somebody like that, they've definitely noticed that, and people from that generation who are like older, maybe like 40, they've definitely noticed like, it's people don't really talk so much. Communication skills are kind of lacking, or people being super open. I mean, even our neighbor, she said, coming from I think where she was, the West Coast.
Yeah.
She said like people here are very like to themselves. Like or like we're like the only people that talk to her, essentially, or like have made an attempt to reach out.
Oh no.
Yeah, you don't remember she said that?
I do not remember that.
Yeah, she said that. Yeah.
That's awful.
I know, it's sad. So
Well, she has kids.
Yeah, but still, like, nobody says like hi, she tries to say hi to people and nobody.
Oh, she did say that.
Yeah, nobody like responds back.
Maybe it's just our neighborhood, but we've noticed the opposite at least.
At least the people around us, I don't know.
I think the people our age are more to themselves.
Definitely.
But like our other neighbor with kids, she's nice.
Well, yeah, I know. I'm saying like I think we've kind of lucked out, but
our other neighbor's really nice too.
Yeah.
So,
I think it's a complicated thing because as sin has progressed in the world, I think we have become more self-centered.
But that's the whole nature of sin, to be worried about yourself.
So since sin has progressed so much, we become more self-centered. And since we're so focused on ourselves, it's no wonder that we are not talking to other people because we're so focused on ourselves, on our grind, on doing our thing, getting on our Benjis, you know what I mean? Like there's this selfishness aspect, self-centeredness, but at the same time, we were created for connection. So it's like we're self-centered, but at the same time, we want connection. So it's like this war going on between us. And I think it's intensified over time, which is fine because, sin has progressed and, Jesus is coming soon and things are just going to get worse and worse. So I think that's a huge aspect that's not talked about much, that like, it's not necessarily that people don't want to talk to you. It's just that they're so focused on themselves. Or if they do want to talk to you, like there's so much fear. There's so much things going on in the world. Atrocities, like how people get murdered, how people, like especially as a woman, we are just like more vulnerable than men, right? Women and children have always been more vulnerable. And so like, even just like, there's so much to look out for, right? Like, a guy could stalk you. Like you could be nice. I could be nice and say hi to a guy, right? And then especially like you guys are saying, how people don't talk to you much anymore. So like I could say hi to a guy, he can hyperfixate on that, and thus like, well, I don't know if he wants to follow me or something. So like there's like lots of factors that as a woman,
Yeah.
I think you have to take into consideration now nowadays that can affect how you communicate with other people. And in the church, we're part of this world, so it's like I see it's a reflection of that, where it's like you communicate, but it's like superficial. You don't get to like other deep stuff. Sometimes it's because people don't want to listen, right? Because there's the like they ask you how are you, but then it's like you can tell they checked out 30 seconds ago. So it's like, why continue to speak?
Why be honest
If the other person is not even listening to you? So it's more of just that dance of like still continue to put yourself out there, being vulnerable, but at the same time, being aware that you might not get it reciprocated, and that's fine, but you should still keep trying.
Mm-hmm.
I think in Adventist circles, things have become more cliquey.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know why that is. Whereas there's a little commingling as a group anymore. Whereas when we were younger, there used to be events like Youth in Action, but that's no longer the case.
There used to be Adventist Youth Society, which was on the English side.
There's IGY, which is the New Youth in Action.
Yes, intergenerational youth
for
night.
Christ or something like that. I get it wrong all the time.
Yeah. Well, that's more of your church though, more of a central thing.
Yeah, so that's like it was Dion's leading it. He's the one that did Youth in Action. So
okay, I didn't even know that.
Mhm.
Really? You didn't know
Yeah.
Dion?
That's interesting. But what I'm saying is it's more cliquey. So do you remember even in the young adult group here, I don't mean to call anyone out personally, but there are cliques where some certain people don't talk to you as if you're a human. They just talk to you like, oh, you're just a random hi, and then walk away. Like they don't actually care about you.
But I also think, sorry to interrupt, I think cliques have existed from the beginning of time. I just
agree.
think now, since there's less communication skills, it is blatant and awkward as heck.
Yeah.
Whereas back then, it was hidden.
Yes, and now I think there also aren't as like group activities to where I think people are more open to chat with you even if you're not part of your clique.
Well, remember what the Bible says.
I think that's more prevalent, and also I think there's even lesser commingling between sexes too.
Yeah,
where like guys stay between themselves and women amongst themselves.
we were reverting back to the 1900s on that.
That sounds stupid, but yeah.
No, I was going to say, I think the Bible actually kind of tells us in Matthew chapter 24, it says the love of man will
grow cold
in the last days. And then 2 Timothy says, for this you shall know, this is 2 Timothy chapter 3, 1-4, it says, for this you shall also know, in the last days perilous times shall come, for men shall be lovers of themselves, of their own selves, covetous, boasters, proud, blasphemers, disobedient to parents, unthankful, unholy, without natural affection, truce breakers, false accusers, incontinent, fierce, and then it talks traitors, heady, high-minded, lovers of pleasure more than lovers of God.
That's all of that is now.
All of that, I think, kind of equates to why I think communication has kind of gone down.
Of course.
There's a lot of issues for us.
I agree to agree.
People don't want to get stabbed in the back because we've all had friends. I've had friends who I thought would be with me forever that, I'm not friends with anymore for various reasons.
Yeah.
So yeah, that is hard. So you add that with the fact that, the generations of today, for a multitude of different reasons, don't really talk so much. It like compounds it. Because I feel like it should be easier than ever today to be able to communicate, to meet new people.
Right.
We have more tools.
And we're the most distant. We have the least relationships, I think, than we've had before.
But like it's I think it's also weird, right? Because you have like these messages, on social media where it's like disappear for 3 months, work on yourself, like go to the gym, blah blah blah. Don't tell anybody about your goals until you've accomplished them. Like that sounds very motivational, but at the same time it's alienating you. Yes, you need to like focus on your goals, but like there's a community aspect that helps you reach your goals and be a better person. Yep. Whereas this just pushes selfishness to me, where like just disappear. Like no, like if now more than ever, we need to actually be in community because there's so much loneliness, right? So much suicide. We need that community, that support to help us grow, be that person. Like that intrinsicness, most of us don't have it. Like that intrinsic motivation, we need other people. But then at the same time, you have the other spectrum where people overshare, like on social media, and like sometimes they're like half naked, right? And some videos are super funny. Not gonna lie, but like some people confuse that with being vulnerable. And being vulnerable, oversharing and telling somebody like you took a shit today and like how it looked, that is not necessarily vulnerable. That's just speaking communication. So like there's a loss as to like what actual vulnerability is and oversharing.
I think there's a funny thing that people comment under people who share a lot, which is we should all know less about each other.
Yeah, people be saying some
It's
stuff like,
funny.
yeah, we didn't need to know that, man. I want to. Oh, go ahead.
Well, I was going to say that I think just to finish off the point about how we as young adults have changed in the communication is that we have less opportunities at church where like AY used to be a thing when we were younger. That's no longer a thing, especially at Adventist and Spanish churches, forgive me. And otherwise,
less, yeah.
And also the fact that we're older, we have more intricate lives with more moving parts. So it's harder to make the time to communicate, which means you have to be even more like you're not going to stumble upon it like where like you would in school, where you can just bump into someone and just happen to meet or talk to somebody at the lunch line or you happen to sit next to them in class. You don't really have that anymore. So you have to be more, what do you call it? More intentional about it. And if you aren't intentional about communicating and talking to people, it's just not going to happen.
Now, going back to the point you said about the message of, like putting your head down, like disappear for 3 months. Like actually like kind of see that message differently just because like I know you don't want to alienate yourself, but as you get older, you realize you really only need, and my parents have told me this, my dad's told me this, like you really need like 2 close friends, right? Everybody else is kind of just like, they're people they're, people you
Agree
talk to
disagree.
No, you really only have like 2-3 close friends in life.
Yeah, but you're saying that everyone else is just peripheral.
No, I'm not saying they're not like friends, but they're not everyone you would share your like deepest.
You have different circle of friends. You have your close friends, and then you have
that's what I'm saying.
There's tiers to your friendships.
That's what I'm saying. So, when it's talking about like, disappearing, it's not saying, just like go in a closet and hide. It's pretty much saying, just, focus on like what truly matters right now. Not everybody needs to know, because a lot of people, like if you have high aspirations, and I've heard rappers and musicians, so I used to listen to a lot of rap, and I know like J. Cole would talk about, people like plotting or like hoping for your downfall and stuff like that.
Praying for your downfall.
Yeah, like not everybody wants you to succeed. They have a smile on their face, and then deep down they're like jealous or they're hating you, right? And eventually that behavior like becomes toxic.
It can be,
yeah. And so not everybody needs to know. That doesn't mean you just remove yourself from the community. Yeah. But it also doesn't mean you need to tell everybody. If someone wants to know and they ask, like, fine, yeah, like this is what I want to do with my life. This is where I'm going right now. But you don't need to like, be boastful about it and stuff like that.
I totally agree with you, Michael. And that's how I would interpret it as well. But I feel like there's a lot of people out there that don't interpret the messages that are put out there in culture, and they take it like verbatim. And if we're already in a world where everything, you can get it on your phone, you don't have to leave your house, and then you get this thing like just affirming everything that you don't want to do anymore. You get messages like, I don't like people. Like, why do I have to talk to humans today? Like, I like my dog. Like, see, like these are funny things. But if we like think about it deeper,
and then
it's a message of alienation. It's a message of selfishness. That's what I'm talking about. Yes. But most people aren't looking that deep. But that message still goes in subliminally.
I would say,
and that affects us as Adventists too.
Well, I wouldn't say that most people actually look at it that way. I think it's the opposite, because in today's world, so much of our lives are shared. Like I
That's
remember,
true.
I don't think that's true.
that is very true.
I mean,
You know
there's,
what
there's a
media,
lot of
No,
oversharing.
time out.
hold up. Let me finish my point.
Yeah,
and I'll
let
let you
Michael
go.
finish.
With social media, like a lot more of our lives are shared than ever before. I remember Dave Chappelle. He made a comment which made me crack up because he was talking about like if you wanted to divorce your wife like 50 years ago, like you could leave her, leave the kids, and go right across the street and have a whole new life she would never know. But today, you divorce your wife, like people gonna know, they're gonna find out somehow, some way, because like everybody's so connected with social media.
Yeah.
There's so much avenues of
Finding
finding out about people's lives. It's impossible to hide. So I think that message where it's talking about like come off, I think it's just trying to like just kind of get off the grid in a sense in that regard.
Sounds okay.
But
Well, you're saying that
Go
our
ahead.
lives are more public, but I would say that it only seems that way because of social media. I don't know if you guys know this, but there is something called the 1% rule, whereas 99% of content on the internet are created by 1% of people.
That makes sense.
what percent of
Meaning-
people where?
Most people are
Of just
consumers.
1% of people.
Most people are
Meaning that for
consumers.
every 100 posts that you see, 99% of those like were made by usually just like one person, meaning that there's individuals are making so much content that the vast majority of people are just consumers. So then when you're saying that our lives are more public,
Yeah.
I'd venture to say that the people who are posting are public, but not in general. I don't think that in generally that much more public.
But most of our friends are on social media though. And
Yeah,
so
but
we know
I'll
a
give
lot
you an
more about
example.
our friends' lives and our families' lives than we would 25, 30 years ago.
Like, I'll give you an example. We've started this podcast a little bit ago. I have not posted about it on my social media at all. You see what I'm saying? You have done a lot of things, but you hardly post on like your feed. And if you do share something, it's usually like something that somebody else posted.
Yeah, I actually
It's
think
not
out
actually-
of the three of us, I've actually made more content than you guys, like little reels and stuff.
Yeah. So when we say that our lives are more public, I don't actually think that's true. I think we've gone more insular.
Definitely a lot more true. I would say at least like from the social media, but it's definitely more true.
It's less private, I would say, in
I mean,
the sense
even-
that
even
Agree
like
to disagree,
even
but we gotta move on,
even
sorry.
celebrities. Just look at celebrities. Everything about celebrities we know, even in the sports world, like we know how much these people even make.
yeah, that's what I'm saying.
Like-
I think it's less private.
But you're focusing on the
Same thing.
1% of people making stuff. Their lives are more public.
I
but
think you're looking at
the
a
vast
statistic.
majority of us are not more public.
I think you're looking at that statistic like the wrong way, but that's all right.
Okay. I think what drove this home for me, specifically in our context, which is dating in an Adventist context, was when Esmarna, you and I went to the Adventist, to the AYP conference.
Oh, yeah.
So for those of you who hadn't heard or who don't know the story, so we went last July and they did something new, or I don't know if it was new or not, but they did something that was new to me, which was that if you were single, you wore a green lanyard. And if you were in a relationship, you wore a black lanyard. What that communicated to everyone was the fact that if you were single or not, meaning you didn't have to actually talk to anyone to know that, which is already a huge barrier that's already broken. So you don't approach the 9 to you when she's, has a black lanyard. You're like, okay, I don't even have to waste my time. I don't have to embarrass myself. Like you're already winning, right? But then there was actually none of the actual dating or talking going on. And you're asking, well, Josue, how do you know? Maybe it was just you. I actually asked the women. I did like a straw poll. And I was like, okay, how many of you have actually been were you there with me?
Yeah.
I was like, how many of you have actually been approached by a guy? Not a single one was approached by a guy. So it's like, okay, you have the biggest hurdle thought out for you, and you're still not even getting at least even talked to.
Those girls are
That's
scary
crazy to me.
But I mean,
girls be rejecting you. They probably were approached, and they was like,
they
no.
didn't probably count it
They
as
gave
an
her-
approach.
They had the
That's a
they
fair,
had the
that's a
resting
fair
face.
assessment. But I think they would have at least mentioned that to me. But again, it was a straw poll, and I could be wrong. But
I thought it was
It
fun.
goes both ways.
I think for me, I have like the podcast that got the conversation rolling on relationships and things like that. So I kind of had that in my back pocket in the travels and things like that. Abby, what did you notice about the whole thing? Because for me, it was I was shooketh.
I mean, I saw a little bit of what you were saying, like lots of trepidation. Is that the word? Like
Sure, we can go with that.
like
yeah.
going in, like not
Y'all using Bible words. Trepidation.
like it was like if there was a guy talking out and a girl with another one, it'd be more like it didn't look super duper intentional, like where you had an out still. But like I thought it was fun, the whole green thing. I know.
I thought that was excellent.
Yeah, I know. I did my thing. I had a little roster after, remember?
You did.
Don't use that word again.
So Abby was interesting.
Don't use that word.
So Abby, interestingly enough, was the exception here because she got approached by a couple of
and
guys.
I approached a couple guys too.
Did you really? Okay.
Of course I did.
Yeah.
And if they had a green, I did a little thing. But anyways,
No, don't just skate past that. What is the little thing that you did?
I did my intentional. I flirted with them.
Okay.
Or
yeah.
I at least gave the signal that I was open.
Okay.
Or like this guy on Instagram says, I gave him the keys to the Kia.
Okay. Okay.
Which is like where you smile and you look at them, or like, that intentional language, keys to the Kia, where like whatever.
Like I see you seeing me.
Yeah.
Yeah. Or the other way
but
around
I thought it was really fun. I remember I made you wear a green one.
Yes.
Because you were like in a situationship with your girl. And I'm like, you single until you ask her.
Until I'm not, yep.
So you better wear a green one.
Fair enough.
Yeah, I don't think that's a good word to use for this podcast.
What,
Situationship.
That's the one Abby used for that specific.
To use the word roster and situationship.
Oh,
that's
all in the same.
Not good.
Wow, Abby, you're a heathen now.
I am a
we'll just
heathen.
assume that,
you need to pray for me, Michael. I'm gonna go to hell.
But did you see a lot of commingling other than like the very last Saturday night? I didn't.
No, I didn't. I mean, most people they stayed with who they knew.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, there was people that made an effort to meet other people. But I think it's normal. It's more normal. Sadly, it's not what the ideal should be.
Mm-hmm.
But like, I mean, it is intimidating to try to meet new people in a whole new space. Like, that's still a truth. But you would think since we were all older there. I think there was very few people that were in their early 20s, right?
I don't know if that's just a culture thing or if that's just like an American thing.
I think it's an America thing because in other countries,
it would have been totally different.
I mean, it is more social, but the problems here, they're still in other countries as well.
Yeah.
But the culture makes it less.
Yeah, I don't know if that's just a cultural, or actually, I'm pretty sure it is like a cultural or just like maybe an American thing. Because I know, like, when I went to Colombia for a mission trip, like, it was now there was also excitement because, I went with AWR a couple years ago. But like, I was totally like accepted by, the Colombian church and the people there. I was invited in their home. I was like the only one that actually happened to. I made good friends with the people there. Very nice, but everything was so easy. And like, even with the language barrier, like, we were, really cool. We were really cool, got close with each other. I think that's I think that it is different though, because we were all there for like the same purpose. And,
yes,
I think
that makes
I think when you come
difference.
Together for stuff like that, like mission trips,
yes, I agree 100%.
It's like a lot easier to.
Where you have a shared interest,
Yeah,
you are going through it together. Like when we went to
together.
Pathways, we would talk to the volunteers like, you saw what happened yesterday. Like there's points of connection.
Yeah, you're kind of, like I think it's easier to like communicate. Whereas I just like maybe events where you're just going for, I guess like AYP or something. I think there's a little more pressure, or not pressure, but I think it's not as intentional. Like you don't have to talk to anybody, So I think people, unless they're like, naturally outgoing, like I feel like I'm a naturally outgoing person. Like I just talk to people and say random stuff all the time. Like I think if you're not like that, it may be harder. But I think in general, like the church, a lot of churches, we know, for instance, the church, won't mention the church, but there was a guy that came to the church that you preached at. And he was a like secret churchgoer, but he had a YouTube channel.
Yes.
And I don't know who told you about it, but he posted a video. He goes all around the country to different churches,
auditing churches
and
secretly,
pretty much like just sharing his experience like at the church. And he did not give a good review for the church we were at. And he pretty much said like no one greeted him, no one talked to him. And he said he was going to have a really bad, poor experience until like you came and preached. And I think that's a lot of churches these days. Like I know we're at a church plant, and because we're at a church plant, we're small, and a lot of the churches, like the big percentage is my family. But everybody gets close to everybody, knows each other. So if you're there, like everybody sees you, and we're going to invite you in, and you're going to get to know us, and we all talk, and we've had people tell us about that they've come from different churches where like another church that we used to go to, we had this one African couple, they're new to the area. They have kids. They went to one of the churches in the area in Milwaukee here, and nobody talked to them like the whole time.
That's awesome.
And they were new. Like nobody greeted them.
Yeah.
And so they eventually made their way up by us, and they had a much better experience, and now they're here, and they're a part of our church now. But yeah,
how much do you guys think is personal responsibility? Because I know, like as it's your church, it's your hospitality, right? That's a responsibility. But as a person, we all have personal responsibility with approaching others as well.
Yeah.
So it's like, how would you guys balance that? Because I think, like for us growing up, I think our whole family has always been social. Like we've gone to different churches. Like my mom and my dad had a church plant. Like I think there was always people at our house. Either we were like they were lodging there if there were boarders for a while, So like I think a lot of the times my family could have been, I feel like, not balanced in the sense of like, or at least this is how I felt, where like it was always my job to approach. It was always my job to put in the effort, or else the other person is not going to. So then,
did you feel overly burdened then?
Huh?
Did you feel overly burdened?
I don't know. I'd have to think about it, but like it's just like I just felt like that vibe. Like I saw it in my parents. Like they would do like all the effort. Like I mean, one example is like family, like we were close, right? We would be the ones to initiate. We would go to visit them all the time, and like nothing reciprocal. And then
from the family, or
from the family, and like these are people we've calling
known
friends
for years and years.
We're calling friends, and it's like I still don't have an answer to this for myself, but it's like, how do you find a balance of like that personal responsibility, that personal standard of yourself of reaching out to other people, but not overreaching out, right? What do you guys think about that?
Overreaching out,
like where you're doing everything, where I feel like sometimes you can be doing it out of a place of fear, where it's like, since if I'm not making an effort to get to know you, Michael, like you're not gonna talk to me anymore. Like it can be like, and then it's unbalanced, and then I can be giving Does that
fair.
make
yeah. So my personal theory on that is you have to, or if you're the one that takes initiative, you have the advantage. Like just to circle back to the AYP thing for like just real quick. Whereas if us who reached out, we had the advantage and we had the results, right? You actually had guys come up to you. You had your your mini little roster and stuff like that. But that's because you actually took the initiative to talk and put yourself out there. Whereas I feel like if other women did that, they'd have the same results, and vice versa for the guys. Now, you're saying when is like reaching out too much, like specifically with that family. My theory is you reach out until you get sick of it, and that's whatever that list is for you. However, if they try to reach out again, you don't hold a grudge.
Oh yeah. Don't hold grudges for sure.
So then that way you're just, for example, I have this friend who I reach out to him, otherwise we don't talk.
Yeah, I have a friend like that too.
He reached out to me for the first time, like I think maybe ever, a couple weeks ago. And I was shocked. I was like, oh, wow, I didn't see that coming. But that was the first time in the years that we've known each other. And I like, you kind of just know that. And then I guess I mentally categorized him as a friend when I reach out, not as somebody who I go to necessarily with good news.
I
so
categorize
so
it
I
as
just
outreach.
tier it.
I do outreach
That's fair.
to check in on people.
You know, that's actually funny. I mean, I was going to talk about that later, but I mean, I guess I'll mention it now, which is the fact.
Before
Okay.
you go to that point, I just want to say something here. So 1 John chapter 4, we'll preach to y'all a little bit here. 1 John chapter 4, verse 18. It says, "There is no fear in love, but perfect love casts out fear. Because fear hath torment. He that feareth is not made perfect in love." And verse 19 says, "We love him because he first loved us. Verse 20, "If a man say, I love God, and hateth his brother, he's a liar. For he that loveth not his brother, whom he hath seen, how can he love God, whom he hath not seen?" So when we talk about, like, reaching out and, how much is enough, I don't think there is a limit to how much is enough. Obviously, now you don't want to invade people's space. If people don't want your company, fine. But, if you're, if your desire to, talk to someone or reach out to someone or get to know someone is rooted in the love of God, like, it's never going to fade. Like, you're going to want to reach out to people because you have the love of God in you, and God wants us to talk to people, wants to communicate with you. There's a lot of hurting people in the world. There's a lot of people who don't have friends. Like, that's what, the church should be all about. Unfortunately, a lot of churches don't do that for some reason. I think a lot of it is a spiritual issue, right?
Yeah.
Like, if you don't have God's love in your heart, like, it's not, like, even if you try, it's not even going to be sincere, right? It's going to be fake, and it's not going to produce, the wanted results. The Bible, like it says in verse 19 there, it says, "We love him because he first loved us." So love awakens love, right?
Yes. So, well, as Ellen White says, only by love is love awakened.
Yes, exactly. And so I think we need to focus more on that. And you said how much of it is a personal thing. I think a lot of it is personal because if we don't have love in ourselves, or we don't have a desire to reach people, with the gospel for the kingdom, because I think we just kind of view reaching out to people like it can be very easy to do this, especially if you're in a church that you want to grow and stuff like that. You can check off the boxes, like you said. Well, I talked to them; they should be good now. Like, that's not really sincere. But if your desire is to reach someone because you truly want them to understand what it means to have love in their life, and understand what it means to, like, know God, even a little better, I think people can sense that.
Yeah. I agree.
People can sense that they actually do care about me. It's not just because a lot of people do that at church. Like, you go to church, it's not just
lip service.
Yeah, like, exactly. A lot of people just go to church and they're like, "Oh, hey, are you doing okay? How was your week?" And then that was it. And then you don't see them again.
Profundity.
You don't see them again. You don't try to make a connection with them until the next Sabbath.
Yeah.
That doesn't like maintain or build, like, strong connection and strong community.
So then the big question that I want to ask is, why is it like this? And my answer is the same thing that they say on TV and that moms everywhere say, and I spell this DAM, no N at the end, but it's the damn phones. I really think it is the phones. And
spiritual issue.
I think it's sin, like I said in the beginning.
It's spiritual. Phone is definitely an avenue that I think Satan has used.
It has become huge
to distract us.
I think it's the biggest, yeah.
And not just the phone, like any screen time, computer, TV. I looked at us that they say roughly the average American a day will spend 7 hours looking at a screen.
That sounds
really unbelievable.
Low. Sounds really low.
Well, I mean, if you think about, like, an adult, like, you work from 9 to 5.
Well, you look at a screen.
So I guess it varies, right? But, like, on average, because I don't honestly look at a screen every time at my job because, I'm in healthcare. But even then, there's screens there.
But, like, for me, like, I work on a computer.
So for you, it'd be longer, right?
Yeah.
I guess I did also look at stats where they say about 2.5 hours a day is spent on social media, 4 hours in total spent on a phone. So, and if you think about how much little time we have anyway, like, all the time left that we have is pretty much going to the phone.
Listen, I have found myself getting distracted on my phone, just doing just the random stuff. I'm like, oh, like, just let me relax for 5 minutes, and that 5 minutes turns into 20 minutes, and I'm like, dang it, this is not really what I wanted to do.
Yeah, no,
so what I've done now is I bought a smartwatch again.
Flip phone.
So I bought a smartwatch that has all my noties. So if anybody wants to text me or whatever, I'll have it there and I'll know. But then I put the phone somewhere out of reach where I don't even see it, and then that helps me. Like, okay, if I need something, it's here. So it's not a question of access because it's on my wrist. Yeah. it's an accent. It's a question of addiction. But I've lost my smartwatch, so if either of you see it, please let me know. I can't find it. I can't find
Satan
it.
is trying to
I
trip
know.
you up. Yeah,
But
no,
I mean,
yeah.
I think in like, so I guess I'm saying it's the phones. What are you guys saying it is?
I'm saying it's a spiritual issue.
Okay.
Because I think the phone, while it is a very big distraction, you can still use the phone. Like the phone, it could be an amazing tool as well as the internet to,
Well, you know what I mean by it's the phones. It's
I know.
It's the gateway to the distractions.
But I'm saying like the phone is still like an amazing tool to use if you use it for Christ, or you glorify it or use it in a way
a productive way.
Yeah, use it in a way that is like adding to your life.
Yeah.
A lot of times we use the phone and it takes away from our life because it just takes so much time away from us.
Yeah.
But like if like I said, going back to the scripture, if you have love for someone, you're not just gonna be scrolling through the phone just mindlessly looking at Instagram Reels or TikTok or whatever. Like I do that too much, but you're gonna be looking for ways to communicate with people, looking for ways to maybe share like a Bible verse on your social media or something that can brighten someone's day, give somebody confidence or hope in something, right?
Yeah.
Like a lot of people are just on their phones mindlessly,
yeah.
and there's and it's all vain, and there's no like there's nothing that they're doing to add to their lives or anybody else's. So it's just a wasted time, and it's being bad stewards of the time that God has given us.
So what were you gonna say, Doc?
I guess what I said in the beginning, that I think the root cause of this all is the sin, and it's made us so self-centered, right? Michael said the love of people will grow cold. Love is growing cold, and love is essential to connection. It's the tension.
It's the putting of others first. Yeah.
Exactly. So if
They're
that's
too self-centered,
if that's going away, it is no wonder that people aren't talking to people as much anymore in a genuine way.
True.
And that's why we are called to be the light, right? To be the difference, because there's so many people out there that need that hope, that need that love. And if we claim to be followers of Jesus and our love is growing cold, then that's obviously a sign for us that we need more Jesus, instead of just saying we're just Adventists.
Because go ahead, sorry.
Because like what you were saying, like, with love, like you'll reach out to other people, so there's no limit. So like I've learned to I'm kind of understanding that. Like I was reading in Thoughts of a Man of Blessing, where it's like it said something about we as Christians can afford to be misunderstood, right? So like how
wait, flesh that out.
Like misunderstood in the sense of like people might not understand our motives, might like think like we're weird or whatever for doing things the right way. So it's like we can afford to be misunderstood. It's okay because we have Jesus, and like we can afford to lose everybody, right? Like I don't want to gain the whole world and lose my soul type of thing.
Shout out to Tobias Mac.
Exactly. So like
who? Oh, Toby, man. I was like, what are you talking about?
We can. So like that thought has just stayed in my mind. Like I can afford to be misunderstood, and if someone sees me reaching out to them as a try hard or something, that's okay, because that's not my motive. My motive is like love. So it's like I feel like if you stay grounded on that, like you'll do it. But at the same time, that unlimitedness, it doesn't go over like. We have a life, right? It's not like you're gonna go out of your way to reach somebody, right? Like you reach out to them every so often, right? There's gonna be like a natural aspect to it, but there's gonna be no remorse, no nothing, because you're doing it out of love and out of connection. And because I call it outreach, because a lot of the people, they don't talk to other people genuinely. Like I know I have a couple of really close friends. That's all I need, right? But there are a lot of people out there that don't have really true connection. So like if I can be that person to them and provide it for them for 20 minutes, even though they might not give it back to me, that's okay.
Yes.
Like I can afford to be misunderstood. Like, but in that person, it can make a difference for them.
You never know.
Even if they don't reach out to me,
That's a good way of framing it. Do you remember yesterday there was the prayer thing in the back room after church?
Yeah.
That I was like, oh, I forgot to do something, and then I just never came back.
Yeah.
What had happened was I had seen he doesn't really talk to anybody.
He doesn't know.
So he and I do talk, and he tends to open up to me. And I was like, if I don't see him now, and I felt the Spirit's like, okay, go talk to him now. Like, this is much more important. So then I left and I talked to him. And you know what he asked me? Hey, I don't have anyone to be the MC at my reception. Will you do that?
Aw.
To me, that felt so good to be like, wow, I was entrusted with something like that. That I was like, okay, that's something that I do on purpose to make sure that he sees like, hey, there's somebody looking out for you.
Yeah.
Even if obviously you're not gonna look out for me. Like, what do you get? Like, you don't care about me. You know what I'm saying? Like, I'm not talking about him personally, but yeah, that happens quite a lot. I mean, I do that too. But I mean, is it in regards to dating? I feel like what happens in like groups is that in moments of levity, we tend to follow the same patterns as we do when we're home. And what is that? Pull our phones out. There's actually a meme where there's tons of reels on it. I mean, not anymore, but years ago, like I'm talking like years ago, like maybe 2 or 3 years ago, there's like this meme where there's this guy's going to a club, and then the comments are like, weather rap's going crazy tonight. And it's that guys go to parties where there's a lot of girls, but they just stand in the corner and go on their phones, and all they do is check the weather app because they're not texting anyone anyway.
Scared of
So
rejection.
then it's like the weather app's gonna go crazy. And it's the funniest thing because it's representative of the fact that the phones, in my opinion, are blocking our, what do you call it, are meeting someone even by happenstance or by serendipity, right?
Yeah.
Where we, instead of seeking out connection to somebody, we just quell that by being on our phones, right? Where before we didn't have that, so we talk to the weird kid for a little bit.
We covered up the anxiety with the phone.
Yeah, I remember. I remember watching. There was a reel on Instagram where it was like an AI generated like reel about World War II. It was like a World War II battle where like it was like the Battle of England or something, or Berlin, where they just had a bunch of like, people shooting up to the sky. There was like a bunch of planes like, flying over. It looked apocalyptic. There was bombs going off.
Battle of
and
London.
then in the comments was like, somebody cracked me up in the comments. They were like, not a phone in sight, just everybody living in the moment.
That's
so funny.
I know, but it's kind of true because like I look at like some parties from like the 1950s and the 60s or the 70s, and no one's on their phone. They're just like,
they're just there.
They're just there.
Well, like people use that meme or like that comment to, or at least in my experience, to reference like the early 2000s or like late 1900s. That sounds stupid. I just said that out loud. But like the 1990s, where like, you had like film cameras, and then you just saw like high schoolers just like living their life, and you saw
Everything
things
was so
differently.
different.
And it's like, wow, not a phone in sight. But then when you put it in the frame of war, they're like, not a phone in sight. They're really living in the moment. I mean, it goes to show that phones aren't everything, right?
No.
Like, just because you're living in the moment doesn't mean that everything is going to be better and the best. But
it's a distraction.
Yeah.
Like, phones could be used like in such a better way to like communicate. And I think they have, but it is also like separated people.
Yeah, because it's only a maybe, right?
It's virtual reality, and now they're trying to like make like this thing. There was a movie that came out. I forget the name of the movie.
Ready Player One.
Are you thinking? Well, I just remember in the movie, like everybody, like the entire world had got like consumed with this.
Game. Ready Player One.
No, it wasn't a game. It was like a virtual reality thing where people would like go into like this. They would like have this thing over their face,
and then they had suits on and like little treadmills.
Is that what it was? But they weren't playing a game. It was just like they would go into a virtual world, and everything they could do was like better. They would actually no, yeah, like it would control like a robot that they had, a robot version of themselves, and so their robot. It looked like a human. It would go and live their lives for them, but they would be at home in their room. Locked away in their bed.
Yeah. Did they have Bruce Willis?
It might have.
Yeah, I
was
looked that movie up recently.
Yeah, and then he finally,
it's not Ready Player One.
That's right. Yeah, and then he like destroyed the whole thing because he missed seeing his wife, right?
Yes.
He wanted to see her like actual face. Yeah, instead of like this fake robot thing that she had going on. Yeah. But they're trying to move towards that. Like I know Facebook,
it's not going to succeed.
I know. Well, I don't know, man.
We're humans, man. They're not going to.
There's a lot of stuff that I never thought was going to be going on right now. That's going on. So I'm not going to put it out of the realm of possibility.
But I mean, I think we aren't learning skills at school anymore, especially with technology becoming more and more prevalent. That it's like you don't have the talk. For example, there was this girl who used to sit in front of me in psychology. Her name was Loman, and I ran in completely different circles. But because she sat in front of me and she was cute, and like in our little pod, I got to know her a little bit, and I got to know about her and her boyfriend Matt and whatever. And like now she's the head of the cheerleaders where we went to school.
Is she really?
Yeah, she is, which is interesting. It's like a nice 360. Yeah, she's the coach.
Okay, I was gonna say the head of the cheerleaders.
Yeah,
she went back to school.
But what's interesting about that is nowadays you just pop in headphones. That you don't see that anymore, and that also happens in school. But my point is that because we've made it too easy to go digital, when you say hit me up, it usually never happens.
Yeah,
more often than not,
and
because
it
stays in a nebulous potential of sure, I'll hit you up, and then you don't know when that hitting up is going to happen. There is no recourse.
Yeah.
There is no
timeline.
Timeline, none of that. And I think that's awful.
I think one of the other things that has made it very hard, and this from the guy's perspective, like if you're trying to talk to, a girl or, something, if she's attractive, that there is potentially hundreds of dudes already in her DMs.
Nowadays, yeah.
Yeah. And so people have more options now. So, it's a lot easier.
Perceived options.
Perceived, but like there's more, it's easier to.
There's more access.
Yeah, there's more access. It's easier to be able to talk to hundreds, sometimes thousands of different people.
More access, less
at the same time.
At the same time, right? Whereas before the phones, you never had that. Like, and it was a lot harder to reject someone or like not, to, I guess, just push somebody away because with the phone you just don't have to respond, or you don't even have to. You could pretend not to see it, right? You're not even
leaving someone on red. Yeah,
just leaving someone on red or
ghosting, like I've done and right? You've done.
I've never done that.
Yes, you have.
I always try to talk.
Really? So even with you hit her back up?
Yeah, I've talked to her.
Like,
but I don't. I mean, I just the conversation dies. But if she asks me something, I don't.
Okay.
Because we have so many options now, it's made like connecting with people less of an experience, a reality. It's just more kind of like whatever,
It's
like,
made it a commodity.
Yeah,
where it's like,
I think that's the word.
Next.
Yeah, next person, right?
Shopping.
People are less, it's not more of, it's, because if somebody tells me, like, you hear this from a lot of guys, like, they're super happy if like, or like if a girl gets a compliment, she's like, oh, whatever. But if a guy gets like a compliment from his
3
grandma,
years later,
he's like still thinking about it,
Yeah.
It's that kind of thing,
Yeah.
So it's just like a lot of what was admired or a lot of what was, really, liked and cherished, 20, 30 years ago, it's become just kind of,
well, that's the thing where, I mean, pointed this out to me one time where she's like, we don't have this many peanut butter options in the Netherlands. And I was like, okay, great. You have more options now. But what she told me is that she has more trouble choosing here which one she likes or which one she wants.
There's so much.
Because there are so many. So then having more options makes choosing more difficult because there are more things to consider.
Well, it's the paradox of choice.
Yeah, paradox of choice.
And that kind of goes back to the beatnik
which is the loneliness paradox, where now we have more access to people, but because we have more perceived access to people, we don't take any of them. And then,
or you just use them superficially for whatever,
exactly. So then we've made ourselves more lonely, more alone, while having the world at our fingertips to talk and connect and whatnot. Yeah. So instead of connecting more, we're connecting even less, and that affects our dating lives even more.
Yeah.
Okay.
I would just say that we can't lose sight of the cosmic conflict of like, like I was saying earlier, like our longing for something more, I think, is growing deeper as sin grows more. So then there's that loneliness. So yeah, there's all these possible connections, but that inner feeling of loneliness, as if it's growing, all that stuff can't fill it anyway. I think, there's like that mental health, depression, suicide, all that stuff. You can have all the money in the world, you can have all the hobbies in the world, but yet that inner longing, that thing, a Jesus thing, that like we need that in order to give attention to other people, like in order to have community. So I think we can't lose sight of that in all this conversation, because that's a huge, huge controlling thing, right? The Bible says we're not fighting against flesh and bone, but against
spirits,
right? And like all of this stuff is moving within all this stuff, whether it's through the phone or whether they put the headphones in and you don't know if they had headphones in, and then if you talk to them, they can't hear you, and then they're like, what? And then you're like, you feel like you look stupid.
Yeah.
Like, I know I hate that, but yeah.
I think specifically regarding Adventism, and this applies to the world too, is that there's the loss of third spaces, meaning we don't have, like, for us, it's church and home. There isn't really another place to go to where we can meet people like within just make a connection. So I feel like we focus more on homebound activities, and then that goes back to reels and short form content that is just addictive. And I think it's just too easy to stay home and disconnect from everyone. And that affects you and your dating and, your prospects and who you are as a person, because now you're spending half your night on reels and you're like, who am I? What am I doing now? I'm turning 30 and I don't know what I'm doing with my life. And I think what that does is showcases the fact that we're all talk, no action. And going back to the AYP example, like the guys weren't making any moves to get to know anyone, to get the ball rolling, to get to, to get to know any of the women or get any numbers or things like that. And also in Adventism, like, have you guys heard of like the singles potluck anymore? Have you guys heard of like any
I've never heard of a singles potluck.
Or what's it called? Something potluck. Do you remember like that one dating thing I went on, or you and I did?
Oh, the virtual one?
Yeah, like you don't hear about that anymore.
They still do that, just because you don't know about it. They still do about it.
I hadn't heard about it. And I don't think there's an initiative from the bottom up or top down on anything happening. So I feel like regarding dating, unless you're really doing something about it, we like a lot of Adventists maybe all talk, no action. Am I alone on that thinking, or what?
I mean, no, because all talk, no action. I think it goes back to a lot of young adults, a lot of us don't know what we want. So yeah, you can talk about love all you want, but if you don't actually sit down and think about what you actually want, there's nothing to act upon because you don't know yet, right?
Right.
So we're not exempt of that. Also, I think there's also fear when it comes to whether it be approaching or talking to someone. And it's something that I feel like we have to take to God, like me personally, like as a woman, where like we can't operate out of fear. Like as Christians, like God banished fear. Like he has not given us a spirit of fear, but of love, of power,
and of a sound mind.
And of a sound mind, of self-control. But yeah, we see fear in dating within the church because of like, what are they going to think? Are they going to reject me? Like all these things that non-believers do, we are doing them also, but it's because are we really taking God at his word, right? Or we are just mimicking what's in the culture and not going back to the Bible. And it's more of like including God in our daily dating life, like, claiming these promises, like I'm scared of like talking to someone like God, but you haven't given me a spirit of fear, right? So it's like, sometimes, we tend to go to God for certain things, but it's like, I can't go to God for other things. And it's like, you can. It's like dating is clearly one of them.
Well, with love, there comes a risk. Always,
and God knows that firsthand.
Well, I was going to say that's exactly, unfortunately how it is with human beings. Like, he made us knowing that we may, which we did, hurt him and eventually obviously cost him his life. So, there's always going to be a risk when you even just want to talk to someone just purely on a friendship level, there's always going to be a risk of rejection. So that's just something that we have to.
And that's something you get used to through practice.
Yeah, but it still doesn't make it easy.
It doesn't make
It makes it
easy.
easier, 100%.
No?
Easier.
I mean, if you keep getting rejected
I
like
think you
left
learn
and
how
right
to-
every day,
I
there's
think you
some dudes
learn-
that will just stop talking to women altogether.
Well, I mean, there's a psychology theory that it's how you interpret things. So it's
Mhm.
easier. It's just your I would say something that gets easier is more about your interpretation changes of it. So then you don't get affected of it the same
So you
way.
just gaslight yourself and say, "Oh, they
No.
Not necessarily
actually-
gaslight.
No,
just
I-
be like,
didn't
No,
reject
like,
me."
hey,
I'm not saying gaslighting
she
at all.
wasn't interested in
I
me,
am
and that's
reframing
not
thought.
and that's not a reflection of me, but
Gaslighting is
rather
not
of her.
everything. Let's see, like
It
I
could
feel
be
like
a reflection of you.
that's a good point, though. That
But regardless, if you get
the fact that you
rejected-
brought the word gaslighting up, so many people use it and they use it so wrongly, like
Internal Ronzos over
reframing,
there.
like interpretation of stuff does not equal gaslighting.
Agreeing.
Like gaslighting means something totally different, but it's so whatever.
I mean, we're gonna have a whole
Well,
episode
you said
talking
how
about
you interpret getting rejected, so I was just like,
But that's
mean,
not
if you do it-
gaslighting because
no, you're
Gaslighting
saying saying people, if they
it's just
keep getting
interpreting
rejected,
it. Interpreting it
they're
differently is
interpreting
not,
the wrong way, and I don't think that's the case for everyone.
Well, you
I think
interpret
there's
things the
definitely
same way.
people who,
But the word gaslighting, I don't think is appropriate.
well, gaslighting means like you're just kind of
lying to yourself.
lying to yourself, or someone is lying to you.
But
And I don't think
it
it's lying
can't-
to yourself.
It's not lying to
What you're
yourself
saying
if
is
you're
how they-
interpreting something
well,
differently.
how do you interpret rejection?
Huh?
How would you
There's
interpret
many
Well,
ways to
with
interpret
time-
rejection.
Okay, well, I'm saying like eventually though, because there's people out there who get rejected a lot and they go
Mhm.
through a bad streak. Like you're gonna fault them for not wanting to keep going out there. Like there's a lot of dudes like there's a lot of girls like that.
I'm not faulting
I mean, I think
anybody
if you
for
give
not wanting
up,
to go out
there's
there.
some fault to that, right? Because you gave up. You
I-
can't. You can't complain about women if you've given up.
Well, you say that, but I mean, have you ever been in that situation before?
I'm not faulting somebody for having difficulties.
You liked the girl a lot and it didn't work out, and that hurt you. Imagine if that kept happening.
I'm not
over
saying-
and over.
I'm not
So-
saying something is going to stop hurting you. I'm not.
That's what I'm saying.
I'm not-
I just want you.
Yeah, but
I
you're
just
kind
want
of
us to-
giving people license to give up and have it be okay.
I'm not saying give them license to, but I'm just saying you have to understand why people do that instead of being like, well, they're interpreting it wrong. That's what I'm saying.
I think you can interpret things differently and not be able like.
It's like I
I'll
guess
give you an example. If you fall while learning to ice skate, does it hurt? Did you fall? Yes, but it was in pursuit of something else. So then you don't just say, I am a failure. Look at me go.
I don't think that's
I'm
the-
out here hurting myself. Whereas if somebody doesn't know that you're learning and somebody like an alien were to just look at you, you'd be like, this guy's subjecting himself to pain.
I don't think that's
It's
the
like,
best
no, he's
application for
learning.
this because skating, you ain't got to skate to survive.
But no, but the argument is that you can interpret the same thing in different ways to get you to different outcomes.
I don't know, man. Things that are hard are more complicated, and the effects are a lot longer lasting than things that are superficial.
I just think of, like, for example, as we get older, we start learning to take things less personally. Correct?
We should.
Right?
We should
start
learn
taking
that.
we start
We
learning that the
should,
world does
but-
not revolve around us. Correct?
Correct.
Yeah.
So that's what I'm saying. As you experience something more with your like interpretation of it, it begins to change because you have different experiences. You don't take it personally anymore with time. I'm not saying it doesn't hurt, but the sting become less and less because you have a different outlook, a different perspective. And that's not gaslighting yourself. That's just growing and your thoughts change.
Yeah.
So
But
they
that-
should. So they should just. I don't know. I have a different
Let's
way
have
of
a different
approaching it.
yeah,
I
let's
said I
have a different
way of-
conversation,
My
different
point
point,
was,
but yeah.
my point is always to be grounded in Christ. That's what I was
Yes.
trying to lead to.
Mhm.
I don't want people to mistake. Because there's people out there that are not going to like you just because whatever, right?
Yeah.
And that's not necessarily, sometimes it's just even science, right? But I don't want people to feel like, they're necessarily just looking at it, or just they're feeling these things because they're not tough enough or they're not,
Oh yeah.
some people definitely, I think you have to, you got to learn there's a risk, but I mean, you have to accept that. Yeah. It's when you put yourself out there, you're going to put yourself out to get eventually hurt,
Potentially hurt. Yeah.
but how do you bounce back from it? That's what I'm
Mhm.
saying,
yeah.
and then maybe Because some people, they're always like, oh, there's no guys out there, or there's no girls out there. But then they're always looking in the wrong places, right? You're going to the club, you're going to the bar, you're going here. We don't got to say any names. And then you're wondering why, it's never working out. Well, maybe you need to go and look in different places, or maybe you need to change what you actually look for in a guy. Maybe that's not correct either, or look for in a girl, right?
Yeah.
Then you'll maybe go to someone who actually, has been there all the time. Really good dude. Maybe he's not got the biggest muscles, or maybe he's not like
the best looking, or
you ain't gotta be dating like Brad Pitt.
There's only one Brad Pitt in this world.
Exactly, right? And there's always going to be someone that's better looking. Like, you gotta prioritize what actually matters.
Here, I'll make one more point, and then we'll kind of wrap up with, is there any way we can overcome this whole loneliness paradox? And it's the fact that I think even in our own micro spaces, like even in our own churches, I feel like we don't even get to know the young adults at our own churches to any sort of level where we could say, oh, I actually know them. Right now, I personally have been guilty of neglecting seeing young adults, going to Friday night Bible studies by making my life too busy. That's my fault. That's something that I can work on, and I think that a lot of people can work on. But if you don't make that a point to do, you're not going to. Like, I talked to today, and he's long distance too, and he told me he's been doing with this girl, and he had a lot of questions to ask me about long distance, and he had to get a lot of stuff off his chest. Where was I? You know what I'm saying? If I hadn't gone yesterday and not shared about my experiences, he would have we wouldn't have been able to have that interaction. So I feel like if we don't get to know and put effort into knowing the young adults at our own churches now, is going to be harder when we do go to set conferences, when we do meet somebody, or a visitor comes, or a new girl comes to our church, and stuff like that. So
yeah, definitely something you got to work on. Like, if you want more friends,
use your local church to practice.
Yeah, you want more people.
I don't know how to explain it.
I mean, some of these churches ain't got really. No, but it doesn't matter. Like, I love, and I've said this where I work, I love talking to old people.
They're fun.
Well, they just have so much knowledge, and I already love history. Like, I've met like amazing people, and a lot of them are like really, really chill, like really knowledgeable. They try to give you like good advice on stuff. Like, I love that, and there's a lot less drama because they ain't got much years left, so they just spitting facts. They're just messing around. But like, I love talking to old people. Even if there's no young people there, I'll sit down with like someone who's twice my age and have a long conversation about a lot of stuff, and you realize a lot of them went through the same things that we did. The Bible says there's nothing new under the sun, right? So yeah, you can definitely like work on like your people skills. It doesn't matter if there's no one there your age, you can definitely work on it, right?
Exactly. So, and now overcoming this
at the same time, stay true to yourself. But
I feel like my, let's say 2 or 3 things would be: put the phone down, get to know people, and number 2, be the odd one out and reach out, be interested in people. I feel like, actually, I think they did a study where they saw that the most popular people were the ones who were interested in more people themselves. Does that make sense? So,
I mean, they say trust is earned by giving trust.
Yes.
So like everything, it's like putting yourself out there first.
Yeah. Well, what would you say? Sorry, did you have a comment before that I interrupted, or how do you think we can overcome this loneliness paradox?
I forgot the other part already. So, I think we can overcome this. I can overcome this by just being intentional with the people I am with right now.
Yes.
Like, for example, like the young adult group, it might not have a guy my age or that type of guy I'm looking for, but like that's cool. Like, I'm gonna get to know the people around me now, for the sake of it, because I'm not just getting to know people because I want to find someone, right? That's just selfish. I want friendships. I want community, right?
Yes.
You want to put energy out there. So I think, like you're saying, I put energy out there, give others courage to be able to talk to you back. And I think it comes back to you, right? God blesses the happy giver. And that applies to
cheerful giver.
Yeah, the cheerful giver. Cheerful, happy. Same thing.
You were just translating the Spanish one.
Oh, yeah. But I guess what I'm trying to say is the more we in God's love put ourselves out there, the more we're going to get back.
Amen.
And in time, we're going to meet somebody.
Agreed.
And it'll change, and then you'll have a significant other. And then you still have to make even more effort to not alienate yourself and only hang out with your boyfriend or girlfriend. You actually still have a community. So it's like, enjoy that now while you have it, where you have less stuff to deal with.
Amen. Abby, will you lead us out in prayer?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Father God, thank you so much for the opportunity for bringing us here. Lord, thank you because we are not alone. Lord, there is an epidemic of attention, of loneliness, of mental health, so many things going on, Jesus. But thank you because you have overcome. You are the victor, and we can have the victory today. Father, I pray that we may be able to consecrate ourselves to you so that you may fill us up with your love, and we may be able to give other people love in a world that's growing cold. Bless us. In Jesus' name I pray. Amen.
Amen.